Welcome to Module 4 of the High Ticket Closing Challenge. This lesson is all about objections. Objections usually surface upfront when you're trying to engage a prospect or when you're trying to get agreement at some point in the sales process. No matter where they come up, it's your perspective and reaction that matters. The key is to relax and see those objections as an opportunity and not a roadblock. There are two specific things to focus on in an objection situation. The first is to capitalize on engagement. At the prospecting stage, some objections are knee-jerk or automatic on the buyer side. But the mere fact that they are responding lets you deal with that objection and seek into a genuine conversation if you are prepared. As you get further into the sales process, objection becomes more specific and reflect what the buyer is thinking. If they are not clear on some aspect of the situation, you have the opportunity to adapt, adjust, and overcome. Even in the end, when the price is typically the issue, you have the opportunity to capitalize on the fact that the prospect is fully involved. The second thing to focus on in an objection situation is to add facts, information, and value. Consider an objection is an opportunity for a deeper and more valuable sales conversation. After all, buyers are asking a question and are in need of a clarification. As a result, you can get a feeling for where they are going and introduce additional facts and information that add value. Help me understand what you mean by whatever they have said. Using this is a good language because it takes the conversation deeper with your prospect. Objections are your chance to align with buyer, collaborate, and move forward together. Based on my experience with sales, I have created this 3-part framework to handle any objection that your prospect might come up with. After learning this process, you would see objection as a friend rather than a roadblock in your sales process. So the 3 stages of this framework are: first, removing the false objection. Second stage, getting to the real root cause. And the third part, reframing the issue such that prospect provides a solution to you. Let's start out with the first part of the framework, removing the false objection. Buyers and humans in general are constantly bombarded with advertising, commercials, sales calls, and marketing.
It's
emails.
9 o'clock.
Which means we have built an instinct to say no or not interested, even before we understand what we are declining. And this is an attempt to protect their time, and that is all. And for that, they put up a smoke screen of no in front of you. You need to learn to identify these false objections and push through them. To deliver that enough information where the buyers know what they are saying no to. The most effective way to remove false objection is by following these 2 simple steps that you can use. Step 1 is acknowledging what the prospect has said. This will let them know that you are listening, and this creates empathy. The second step is take control with a question. So, when your prospect gives you an objection, just try to acknowledge what they said and then ask a question to further clarify the real reasons. This takes us to the second part of the framework, which is getting to the real objections. Once we have cleared past the smokescreen of the false objections, then we need to get to the root cause of the real objection. Asking great questions would help you get to the real concern the prospect has in mind. There are, you can go about questioning. There are basically three typical types of questioning that you can use. The first one is the probing questions. It helps us to get to the root cause of the issue and why it exists in the first place. One example could be, I understand your situation, but why does this issue persist? The second type of question is to get clarity on the situation. One example could be, you can ask your prospect, if you remove this issue, would there be anything to stop you? We want to clarify if this is the only reason or the issue that they have. This is clarification question. The third one is questions to understand how our services are important to them. And it's a simple question. How do you think our services can help your business? We just ask them how they think we can be useful to them. By using these questioning techniques, we can get to the real issue that the prospect has in mind. Now, moving on to the third part of the framework, where prospect comes up with a solution. The most important part of handling an objection is that the solution must originate from the prospect's mind. And as a consultant, as a coach, as a business owner, we need to guide the prospect mind towards a solution that would be best for both of us. In the previous steps of the framework, we have got to the real objection. We've removed the false one and found the real objection. We have understood the core motivation about what drives our prospects and what drives our prospects' minds. So in this last step, we have to ask our prospect for the solution, and we can do this by just following these two steps. Step 1, confirming that we are a good fit and how working with us would help the prospect. And second, asking the solution to the problem. This may sound very counterintuitive that the prospect gives you a solution to the problem, but it works so much better than you coming up with a solution. Now we have understood a lot about frameworks and how we can go about it. Let's get into the real life objections and see how these objections turned out and how you can get to the real cause and ask the prospect for a solution. One of the most frequent objections comes up when a prospect asks to send you something over. They are mostly avoiding taking the decision at the moment and thus coming up with an objection. And that objection is to send something over for them to look so that they can decide to work with you or not. This generally happens when they are not sure about your services yet. So in the conversation, we would try to get into the real objection, or in this case, the real question your prospect has in your mind. So when a prospect comes up with an objection, can you please send something to look over and then I can decide? How would you get to the real by asking questions? So you can do, sure, I could send you something, but is there something specific that you wanted to look at? Did we miss anything in our conversation you wanted more clarity on? Now, this question would get us to the real objection they have in mind. Remember what we did. We acknowledged their problem and then we asked them the clarifying question. And then the prospect can say, can you tell me more about the process? And what would you do? You could ask more specific questions. Would you like me to be more detailed about any specific topic? And the prospect might come, would you tell me more about the lead generation process I am? And then you can explain in detail the process. The key here is to keep it simple. Take a real life example that makes it easy for them to understand. Once you have done this, you could head over to the acknowledging the solution part. One of the next objections that I come across is I need few days to decide on this. How would you respond to that? You could respond something like this: Sure, I understand. This is a big decision for you and your business, and I'm here to help you in any way possible. Is there anything specific that I wanted to go through in the next couple of days that would help you make a better decision? Now, this is removing the false objection and trying to get to the real goal. We acknowledged what the prospect is going through and we get back on the pitch with a question. Then, the prospect can give you something like this: I need to look over my finances. Now, this could be the real reason that they would need a couple of days in the first place. Now, we know that prospect was actually concerned about their finances, so what would you say to them? So you could say, definitely, if finance is sorted out, would there be anything that would stop you from making this decision right away? Another clarifying question. Okay, if this is the real root cause, we have to make sure, is there anything behind this or not? If the prospect says no, then perfect. This is the real root cause, this is the real objection the prospect has. It is the finances. So if they say no, this is the real cause, then you can take over, like, when will you be able to look over your finances? And then prospect might say a couple of days or 2 days, 3 days. Then what you have to do is you have to set up the next time within the 2 days or 3 days of framework. You can say, let me check my calendar. Would you be available at 12 p.m. or 3 p.m. to get on a call to discuss the next step? And when the prospect agrees, you can just send the invite and you can say, would there anything stop you from coming to that call? Because that also happens. People go ghost on the calls. Our goal with this is to set up the next date with the prospect to finalize things. Because it is not always necessary to close the prospect on the call. Sometimes it is a genuine concern with the prospect that they don't have finance or they need time to look over their finances, and that is okay. But our goal is to understand the real root cause and give them and try to help them. Every prospect is different, so every objection should be considered with that personality of the client. You could start recognizing these after practicing this framework that we have learned across last 3 modules. Our goal is to help the prospect take the next best decision, understand the real concern. One important thing we need to keep in mind is, like, while we are booking the next date, that it should not exceed 72 hours from the current time. Because people tend to forget things. They might not even remember you after 3 or 4 days, or they might not remember what they have discussed last 3 days. So it is important, set up a time in less than 72 hours. Let's move on to the next major objection, which is, I don't have money right now. How would you handle that? We could say, I totally understand finances can be a challenge and we always do our best to work with people in such a scenario. But if finance would not be an issue, would there be anything else that would stop you from starting with us immediately? And now we acknowledge the prospect, and now we get back on the pitch with a question and try to figure out if this is the real root cause. And if the prospect says no, then perfect. Then you can say, we are a good fit to work with each other, and working with you help you remove the biggest worry that you have to get their ideal goal. Now, how can we solve this money issue and start working with you? Now, we acknowledge the solution, we try to remember what it's in the stakes for them and ask them to come up with a solution. And the prospect say, well, I can do a payment plan. And if you have a payment plan, then just present them the idea. If not, then ask the prospect itself what kind of payment plan would work for them. The goal here is to understand what is feasible for your business and your client. It's about coming to a mutual agreement about working together. And once you have done this, you could head over to acknowledging the solution part of the framework, which we learned yesterday. The fourth objection that we come across quite frequently is I need to talk to my partner or a spouse. Well, you could say, sure, I understand that this is a big decision for your business and it makes sense to consult your partner or spouse. But if your partner or spouse agrees to everything that we discussed, would there be anything that would stop you from making this decision? Now, again, we acknowledged and we get back to with a question. If a prospect says no, then great. When you'll be able to speak to your partner or spouse, getting more clarity, getting more clarification on when they are going to do that. And prospect might say, I can do this over the weekend or next 2 days, whatever. Our goal is similar from the last objection. We have to set up a time with them. Awesome. Let me check my calendar. Would you be available at 12 p.m. or 3 p.m. on Tuesday to discuss the next step? And prospect would agree to a time. And then you can just send them an invite. And the last clarifying question that we did last time, would there be anything that would stop you from coming then? If they say no, then you say, I would encourage you to bring your partner or spouse on the call so that I can answer any question that they might have for me. So this is also very good. You acknowledged and you gave them what needs to be done. We have gone through a few of the most common objections, but you might get a lot of other objections. But with this framework, you can break down the real objection and guide your prospect to come up with a solution. And with this, we conclude our module 4 of this challenge. And in the next module, we're going to talk about how you can distinguish yourself in the market and be seen as an expert among your competitors.